Okay, let's dive right in. We've all heard about it, right? That one little number that seems to carry so much weight. The IQ score. It's a number that can define, divide, and honestly, just confuse a lot of people. But what is it really? And this quote just hits the nail on the head. A single number that can bring someone joy or anger or just total confusion. It can be used to get a student extra help in school, but let's be real, it's also been used as a weapon for teasing for generations. It has this incredible power to build you up or knock you right down.
So, that's the big question we're going to tackle in this explainer. What is this number truly measuring? We're going to peel back all the layers and finally demystify this score, once and for all.
To really get the score, we first have to grapple with the concept it's trying to measure, and that's intelligence itself. And, well, that's where things start to get a little tricky. I love this analogy. It's so perfect. Just like an atom, intelligence isn't something you could literally see or touch. It's what scientists call a construct. You can't observe it directly, but you can see the evidence of it, through things like problem solving, pulling up information, and remembering stuff. And here's something that might actually surprise you. These really complex tests, with all this mystery built up around them, they weren't created to measure some deep, innate genius. Nope, they had one very specific, very practical goal in mind.
That's it. That was the whole point. At their core, IQ tests are basically academic aptitude tests. They were built to figure out which students might need a little extra help in the classroom. They measure skills that are super useful for getting good grades, things like verbal skills, math, and analytical thinking. Understanding this simple, original purpose is really the key to reframing what an IQ score actually means.
But, just because it had a practical purpose didn't solve a much deeper scientific debate. For decades, psychologists just could not agree on what intelligence fundamentally is. And that kicked off this huge question. Is it one single thing, or is it many different things?
So on one side, you had Charles Spearman. Back in the 1920s, he argued that there's this one single core ability called general intelligence, or G for short. He believed this one factor could explain why some people just seem to be pretty good at a whole range of mental tasks.
But then Louis Thurston came along and basically said, hold on a second. He argued that intelligence isn't one thing at all. Instead, he thought we have several separate, independent abilities. Like how good you are with words, or your ability to picture objects in space, or even just how fast you can perceive things.
And this right here, this became the central debate that drove research for years and years. Is a person smart because of one powerful core ability, or is it because they have a strong mix of different, independent skills? And this whole debate kept evolving, which leads us to more modern ideas, like Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. Gardner took that idea of separate skills and just blew it wide open, suggesting there are at least 8 different ways to be smart.
Just look at this list for a second. Of course, it's got the ones we usually think of, like logical, mathematical. But it also includes things like bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Think of an amazing basketball player. Or musical intelligence, like a world-class musician. Gardner's whole idea is that we all have these intelligences, just in different amounts. So, with all these different theories flying around, how in the world did we end up with a test we know today? Let's take a quick look at the history of the most famous one of them all, the Stanford Binet. It's a pretty wild ride. It all started in Paris, way back in 1905, with this simple tool from Binet and Simon. By 1916, that idea evolved to include the concept of mental age, which gave us the classic IQ formula. And now, today, it's this incredibly complex assessment, the SP5, that measures 5 totally different cognitive areas. It's come a long way from that original 30-item scale.
So how did they get that magic number, 100? It was actually surprisingly simple. A test would figure out your mental age. Then you just divide that by your actual age, your chronological age, and multiply the whole thing by 100. So if your mental age and your real age were the same, say 10 divided by 10, you get 1. Multiply by 100 and boom, your IQ is 100. Perfectly average. But, and this is a huge but, this is where we have to be extremely careful. While the math might seem simple, how it's been used is incredibly complex and, frankly, filled with problems, especially the issue of cultural bias. An IQ test is a tool, not a final verdict on who a person is.
To really understand what I mean, let's look at a really powerful historical example. In his classic book, Stephen Jay Gould tells this story about what happened when IQ tests were given to immigrants arriving at Ellis Island.
A huge number of immigrants, especially from Eastern Europe, took these tests and failed, in staggering numbers. And this had devastating consequences. Many were denied entry and sent back home. So why? Why did so many of them fail?
The reason was painfully, heartbreakingly simple. They didn't speak English. The test wasn't measuring their intelligence, it was measuring how familiar they were with a new language and a new culture. It's just a stark, powerful reminder of a test's limitations.
In this story, it reveals the fundamental truth. Every single test is a product of a culture. Its questions, its format, even its definition of what smart is, are all shaped by the culture of the people who created it. There's no such thing as a truly neutral test.
So, after all of this, after the history, the debates, the critical flaws, where does that leave us? What's a better, more complete way to think about intelligence?
Well, the psychologist David Wexler, who actually created another major intelligence test, offered up this definition. And I think it's a great one. It frames intelligence not as being book smart, but as this broad adaptive ability. It's about how you navigate the world, how you solve problems, and how you achieve your goals within your environment.
So if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this. An IQ score is just a snapshot. It's one piece of data from one specific tool at one single point in time. And while it might be useful sometimes, it is not, and it never can be, the whole picture of a person's intelligence or their potential.
And that leaves us with a final, really important question to think about. If a single number is just too simple, too limited, and too biased to capture the whole incredible spectrum of human intellect, then how should we think about and measure human potential? What really matters when we try to understand what a person is truly capable of achieving?